auspicious event. Before I hand over to our moderator, Ms. Jeanette Murwane, we've got the CEO of CETA, Ms. Dr. Situma Mohapi, who's in the room. He feels that he needs to clarify and answer to certain questions and issues that were left hanging in the previous session. So before I hand over to Ms. Jeanette, I will ask Dr. Mohapi to then come and give us a brief overview of what is it that the CETA is doing. As we know, it's a government agency that's responsible for connectivity. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I was not in the program and I've been trying to get the mic, but my principals kept the mics to themselves. So, and I mean, this is essentially to assist with some of the questions that were asked during the earlier session. CETA is a state IT information agency, right? Not the other, not the training, sector training authorities. And I work there as a CEO. I think the question that is being asked, the fundamental question that is being asked is, while the industry is doing certain things, what are the practical things that government is doing to reduce the barriers, or rather create opportunities for the creative industry to actually exploit 4IR technologies, right? So the Deputy Minister, when she started, she talked about her prowess in languages, right? I just want to give you an example. If you go to Parliament, the main assembly, the National Assembly, the main room there, right? You'll see booths outside, and there are probably 9 booths. Inside those booths are translators, right? You've seen when somebody talks in a certain language, and then an MP picks up something for the ear, right? That's because there's a human being there that is translating life to life, right? Now, one of the areas, and you can apply it in so many things in so many areas in the creative industry. Not everybody may have the kind of prowess that the minister was talking about in terms of languages, right? And the question may be, how do you enable people to consume the content and have translation that is actually through translation that is actually keeps the meaning, right, of whatever is being said on the TV, the underlying meaning. So, sister there was reminding us of African poetry. African poetry, there is a meta system, but within that meta system, there is a lot of creativity in there. Now, if you were to give a machine, just maybe using machine learning on its own, right, it will probably never understand the nuances of African poetry. And it will probably end up translating something different, right? Because probably, I don't know how many people can say that they understood what sister was, the sister's poetry at the time when she was doing it, right? Now, an artificial intelligence can give you a subset machine learning. Then you can go into deep learning, right? Where now you start capturing the semantics, the message behind the message, right? That is where it captures the culture. That is where it then translates in context. So your movies, when they go into translation, you don't need to, you can carry that context, but be efficient in carrying that context in a different language. I don't know if the old people, if you're old, you remember JJ, right? Was converted into all manner of languages in the 80s, right? What JJ was saying in Spedio and Soto was not what JJ was saying in English, right? In terms of meaning. So you have an opportunity. So machine learning is part of AI. Deep learning is part of AI, right? And it can definitely be used. The second thing I just wanted to say is, how many people here, and of course there are other areas of AI, big data, we've talked about it, understanding the market so that you create in context as well, right? Now, how many people can afford, how many producers in here can afford to have their own 4IR engines, or applications. They're very expensive. A proper deep learning engine is very, very expensive. If you were to buy it and buy it and buy it, you'll probably all maybe not be so viable financially. What the government has done through us is to create a cloud platform, right? The cloud-based platform that on top of it has all of these 4IR technology engines. So we'll have an engine for IoT, we'll have an engine for machine learning, for deep learning, we'll have an engine for robotics to create the fake people, right? We'll have an engine based on this kind of discussions for even, for some of the tools that you use in creating or processing your things. You can sit wherever you are because it's in the cloud, but it's in the local South African cloud. So when you are doing all of these things, you are protected. We provide protection from a data storage point of view, right? And we provide also protection from an IP point of view. Now, the other question was then asked about how do we work together as SOEs. Let me give you there were two SOEs here, Centec and CSIR, right? Now, we put this engines for you to then make use of 4IR technologies. And you only pay as you use, right? If you use it for 5 minutes, you pay for 5 minutes because other people are paying for 5 minutes. That's a cloud model, right? The second thing is that Centec is talking about an OTT platform. That is where you ingest, you store it, and then you can distribute it through multiple channels, right? Then CSIR is talking about if you distribute through mobile channel, right? Then you can actually then reach more people than the people who are only on 3G and LTE, right? There was a comment about whether it's cost effective or not. These are distinct functions of an ecosystem that supports you, and every one of those, there's no duplication in that ecosystem. Every one of them, right, is made available by government, right? The cloud system that I'm talking about is going live on the 1st of April, right? And then we're going to put the 4IR engines. What I would like to commit, Deputy Minister, is that we are going to have a function within SETA that specifically looks at the creative industry, right? And that becomes a channel for the creative industry into this government system, at least from a SETA perspective. And I would like perhaps to even suggest that Centec does that and CSIR does that, and we have and everybody else, SASA, right? And we have then an enabling system, right? Particularly for those things that cannot be purchased by small entities there, right? And the people in front who understand the creative industry and can translate your requirements into technology requirements. That is I would like to make that commitment today. We will find the people and create that channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. I think that's very insightful coming from the SETA CEO to say that there is a platform that's available that will be utilized in conjunction with Centec as well as this GCIS. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I did not introduce myself. My name is Dimakato Kocha, and I'm a councillor at the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa. And we are really delighted to have been invited. And maybe, Minister DM, just to boast a bit about what is it that you're doing as well, because I see that we are not given an opportunity, and I'm also mindful of time. But just to make colleagues aware that from the ICASA point of view, we are mindful, we are doing something about data, because I know that's a very topical discussion nowadays. You should be aware that in the next few days, on the 1st of March, we're going to be launching our regulations that are earmarked towards the lowering of data. The regulations mainly will be looking at the rolling of data, the expiration of data, and so forth. And also just to highlight the fact that within ICASA, we've got what we call the Digital Content Advisory Group. The Digital Advisory Content Advisory Group comprises of the terrestrial broadcasters, SABC, ETV, Mnet. We also have IPOs as well, represented in this forum, as well as civil society. The objective of this forum basically is to ensure that there is sufficient content, particularly local content, for the dual elimination process that we know that the government is undergoing. We are going through a digital migration process, and government as well as ICASA are concerned that there should be sufficient content that is available for viewers out there while we are undertaking the process of digital migration. One last thing that I want to boast about is the fact that we've got what we call the 5G Forum. The 5G Forum basically is aimed at releasing the very spectrum that is going to be required for your IP, for your industrial, your fourth industrial revolution. Yet again, this forum comprises of the various stakeholders, your telcos, your broadcasters, and so forth. So we are trying by all means as the regulator to ensure that we are creating an enabling environment that will allow for the 4IR to then take place. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll then hand over to Ms. Jeanette, who will then introduce her panel, and then we'll kickstart. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, and welcome back from lunch. I know lunch sessions are the most difficult, but let's try and work together and make this a more interactive session. So my name, as mentioned, is Jeanette Morwani. I'm the Acting Deputy Director General from the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services, and I'm responsible for a portfolio called Information Society Development. Within that program, we're looking at programs around the fourth industrial revolution. We are the ones who are helping the president to set up the presidential commission. We're also looking at the issue of e-government, working along with CETA. We're also looking at how do we develop digital skills for our society. So we're working with our minister to develop the 4IR army that is required for this country. We're also looking at issues of ICT innovation, and also looking at issues of how do we measure our sector to make sure that we constantly monitor it and make sure that we remain globally competitive as a sector. So the session that we are going into, the main purpose is to say the fourth industrial revolution is actually a convergence of the physical, the biological, and the cyber world. And with that comes issues of now us having to change the way we do things. The fourth industrial revolution, for me, if I can give an example about it, it's the same way as in 2000 when we were approached by the Y2K. Most of us, we were worried that on the 31st of December, what's going to happen? Will my money still be in the account? Whatever. So it's the same with the fourth industrial revolution. Now we are saying, how do we prepare ourselves so that we leverage from this fourth industrial revolution in terms of developing the right kind of skills, making sure that we understand this animal that is called the fourth industrial revolution, and also looking at the different sectors to say, how is this revolution going to impact the different sectors? So the discussion here is about now the creative industry to say, how is this revolution impacting this industry, but how can we prepare the people who are already working in this industry to prepare themselves from a skills perspective? Do they need to reskill? Because with the fourth industrial revolution, each and every one of us will have to have a basic digital skill. You will need to be able to use digital platforms to be relevant in this fourth industrial revolution. So the first point will be around skills development in terms of the fourth industrial revolution in this industry. And then the second aspect is about this industry having traditional media platforms, but now there is an emergence of alternative platforms, online media platforms that are emerging. So the idea is to then introduce those alternative media platforms and have a discussion on how do we then make sure that the people who are using those alternative media platforms, how will they then be able to control their content to make sure that they do not lose their IP? So having said that, I will introduce my panel. Each one of them will do a presentation, and I'll give an opportunity for each presentation to receive 1 or 2 questions. and then we can have a broader discussion around the issues that I mentioned in the end. So on my right hand, we have Ms. Beth Arendse, who's from the South African Creative Industry Incubator, and followed by Ms. Wandim Kize from Telkom, and she's the Executive of Content and PL Business Line. And next to her, we have Mr. Fanani Lisiva, who's from the South African Music Performance Rights Association, SIMPRA. He's the CEO of, SAMPRA. And on my left, I have Ms. Salamina Musisi, who's from the Sorele Media Platforms. And next to her is Ms. Pamela Bess from the Do TV online platform. So the first presentation we're going to take is around the skills for the fourth industrial revolution and how this will be impacted by in the creative industry by Ms. Beth Arendse. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Deputy Minister, colleagues, creatives, it's a privilege to be here today. We get to talk to you after you've had lunch, and it's Friday afternoon, so we're going to do our best to keep it moving and keep it light and interesting. I'm representing the Creative Industries Incubator, and we've actually, in partnership with industry, established a Digital Creative Skills Academy called Leaders in Motion Academy, LIMA. And so important are the skills for this whole fourth industrial revolution that we actually literally can't talk about the fourth industrial revolution unless we've looked at this angle. So we're based in Yesteris, which is a township in Tshwane, and the way we think of skills is from the ground up, because that's where we are, and what is practical and what works. So culture and creativity are one of the major currencies of the fourth industrial revolution. That's a saying that has been coined by Professor Richard Haynes at the SA Cultural Observatory. And we have this view generally right now that the economies that will undergo this fourth industrial revolution shift successfully are actually not going to be the ones that focus on the machines, but the ones that focus on the human aspect of what 4IR is going to mean. So I want to start by telling you a story of, and this is actually a true story. This is Thabo, and Thabo is a creative. So he's got a smartphone, he's building games using cloud-based plug-and-play software. He's a bit limited because the Tshwane free Wi-Fi is kind of only 50 megabytes a day, but he's out there hustling, he's doing his thing. He is building games, he's recording videos, he's doing a bit of photography, and he lives in the township of Yesteris, where we are from. He doesn't have unlimited Wi-Fi. He doesn't have his own equipment. He doesn't have any business skills. He doesn't have a whole lot of money. And he doesn't have formal training. So where he is in Yesteris, he can see the market. There is a film industry that is beckoning. There's the whole television and media industry and all the related industries around that. There's an advertising industry. There's an animation sector. And now animation is not just for, the cartoon characters we think about. Animation now has an application in an industrial context in terms of virtual reality and how much training is being done in that space using VR and animated items. Gaming. And we now have the platform economy, and every single thing on any platform is digital creative content. So where he's standing, he doesn't have access. And if he's from the community I'm from, the chances are he's going to end up on tick. Highly talented, highly creative, no access. And that's really the number one thing we've got to look at when we're looking at skills for this fourth industrial revolution. The army is there, but the army is in our communities, and the army doesn't have access. And normalizing access has got to be the very, very first principle that we work from. Normalizing access not just to the digital technical skills you need for 4IR in the creative industries, but also to business skills. So we're normally seen as the song and dance people. We're normally the last ones to be invited to a summit. You guys know how it works with the creative sector. We're there for the entertainment and all of that. But finally, with this fourth industrial revolution, there is an opportunity for us to mainstream and be mainstreamed, but it's going to depend on us rising to the occasion. The research is showing that the two sectors that are not going to be impacted by 4IR as badly as all the others is IT, for obvious reasons, and the creative industries. World Economic Forum tells us top 3 workforce skills by 2020, which is now, is critical thinking, complex problem solving, and creativity. And those of us who studied a bit of cognitive and creative stuff will tell you the top 2 are a derivative of number 3. So there is huge opportunities for us. What skills do we need? I talked to a corporate last week again and challenged them on where they're going to spend their skills development budget. And they said, oh, no. It's fourth industrial revolution. We've completely rethought our strategy. We're putting it all into coding. Now that's cool. We need that. But it's not just about coding. The digital platforms, the back end is done by the coders, but the front end is done by the creatives. Every single thing that is out there right now, the front end is done by creators. And too often, the coder owns the IP, and the creative is hired to make it look nice, but they're not on the ownership end of things. So coding's all good and well, but coding without digital creative skills is short-sighted in terms of what this fourth industrial revolution means. So when we say digital creative skills, we're talking the technical skills: film production, video production, photography, digital illustration, animation, VR, copywriting, script writing, etc. But another critical thing, it is criminal right now to train anybody, especially a creative, in technical skills without giving them entrepreneurship training. We have got to understand content ownership, IP, how to brand ourselves, how to navigate this platform economy, because ownership is the issue at the end of the day. And then there's the soft skills side that we bring to this revolution, which we'll look at a little bit later. So let me just tell you, we are not immune as an industry to AI. Already in our industry, there's some examples here. They predict the 2049, we will see the first complete novel, bestseller, written by a machine. The first movie trailer's already been edited by machines. In the music space, you don't need to play an instrument anymore to produce a track. There's software now that you can actually even compose. Amper and Juke Deck do that already. Automated mastering software, it's becoming more and more easy to remove some creative skills. Journalists and publishers already using AI to automate news production. There's a poem that's already been written that was accepted by a literary journal that the judges didn't know came from a machine. So we have got to look at skills from 2 angles. The one is we can be replaced in certain categories, but machines can't match humans in tasks that require social skills and in terms of interpretation and contextualization of content. Anything that's knowledge-based, a machine is eventually going to do. So it feels like law and accounting, all those things are going to disappear in the way we know them now. But how do we keep up with the skills that we're going to need to have tech that serves us without taking our creative oversight out of the picture? On the soft skills side, we have a challenge in South Africa when it comes to creative thinking and creativity, because creativity is not prioritized in our school curriculum. So our schools, it's all left brain activities. And we don't even switch on the right-hand side of the brain. And it's mostly no-fee and low-fee schools where the arts has been removed. You can trace the drop of maths and science specifically to where the arts was no longer a major priority area in schools. Because if you can't think abstractly, you can't problem solve, you can't think creatively, you're not going to be able to do some of those other subjects. So to have creative thinking, you need whole brain thinking. And this is a huge opportunity for creatives to start coming with solutions in terms of how we teach creativity to the workforce, the corporates, and into our education system as well. We've also got to shift teaching methodologies to use more right brain approaches. Instead of me talking to you here today, I should have just played a video or should have had an interactive VR thing that you all put on, and we should have done it that way. That's how we've got to start thinking, even in teaching. So what do we need to consider for skills? Inclusive innovation. These skills that we need now require higher levels of specialization. And if we don't have a radical shift with regard to access, then fourth industrial revolution can mean we exacerbate the divide that we have right now. The inequality is going to deepen. So we've got to start putting hubs in the townships and in the rural areas for skills development. We've got to normalize access. We've got to be practical about it. You can't train people if they don't have transport to get there. You can't train people if they don't have a meal while they're there. We've got to start mashing up skills. It's all in silos. So coders train over there, creatives train over here. We need these things to mix so that we can do virtual reality, the coding side, and the animation side in one course. And then data must fall, because the biggest barrier to access for these young creatives that we're trying to skill is the cost of data. We've got to go back to basics. So ministers, we have to get our education colleagues in the room, because if we don't put music and arts back in ECD and foundation phase, and we don't turn on the right-hand side of the brain so that we can have whole brain thinking, we're not going to have a creative workforce going forward. And we've got to find out how we can, Minister talked about STEAM, we've got to do it across the board, not just with the maths and science. So they've got to be priority learning areas in the curriculum. And how are we going to take creativity to the current workforce? Because all of us who are already in the workforce, majority of people in corporate spaces, creativity is not a high priority area. How do we reskill people? I think creatives know how to do that. And I think there's a very lucrative market there that creatives need to start looking at. Entrepreneurial skills. It is the gig economy that is now coming. If you don't know how to own your own hustle, we're always going to be at the mercy of the dude who does. The guy who's not the best creative, but he's the best business guy in the room. And he ends up owning the content and owning the access and owning the rights. And as creatives, we don't get it. So we've got to skill kids to understand the platform economy and how to monetize content. And a lot of this training has to be agile skills. So you have to reskill every few years because the tech is moving too fast. You have to not necessarily have a 4-year degree. Even our 1-year programs are how old already? You've got to be able to change it within a very short time to be responsive to what's actually going on in the sector. I think right now, basically our skills, digital skills, are artisanal skills. And yet I can't go to a TVET college and do photography or design or filmmaking. I can do bricklaying and welding and plumbing. I can't do photography. I've got to go to a private college and pay 100,000 Rand for 1 year before I've even bought equipment. It's not accessible. And then I've got to go back in a few years' time to reskill. So we need agile skills. We need to be able to accredit and have quality skills that we can turn around quickly. On the social side, what do we need to consider? Fourth Industrial Revolution changes how we do things. It changes how we do everything, how we live, how we interact, how we nurture relationships, how we consume goods. And as artists and creatives, we are actually, the role of culture is that we are the custodians of identity. This is now the opportunity that we start influencing the narrative, owning the narrative, because what the content you put out there determines the narrative. So there's a huge role that creatives have to play in Fourth Industrial Revolution in shaping what the front end of 4IR actually ends up looking like and what that interface is between society and the machines. And then I think one of the ministers also mentioned this Afrofuturism trend. It's sad that that narrative had to come from outside Africa. This is the type of example I'm saying in terms of identity. What are we putting out there that says who we are? And that marries it with tech and where we're going. But it states our identity strongly because we are the custodians of that. And then we need to see more creatives skilled to actually develop tech for our own industry so that we don't have, with all due respect, the CSIR and other tech people dictating this is the platform and we must just use it. I think we know what we need. So we need to find a way to bring tech into our space, but in a way that it works for us, that use the other side of our brains. And I think that is highly possible. And if government were to incentivize the development of mainstream African creative innovation platforms, why are we not looking at blockchain when we come to royalties collections and all of these things? Should we not get rid of collecting societies and start looking at tech to do that? Blockchain's a possibility. You know, just saying. There's things that we know that we need and we want. We need to start getting around the table in terms of what skills we put out there to skill use to start doing these things for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, without an understanding and a nurturing and a skilling of the cultural and creative industries in this economy, we actually run the risk as a country of skilling our very, very talented creative youth for jobs that are not going to exist in the next 10 to 20 years. Or we could be on the cutting edge of empowering a workforce of young emerging creatives that can find employment and own new businesses, innovate in the vast digital networks that cross borders. And they will be the holders of the currency of the future.
Thank you. Before we go into the presentations on the online media platform, I'll just take one or two questions around the skills for Beth. If, by a show of hands, if I can see. All right. Yes, Deputy Minister.
I think the message, it's not a question. I think the message Bev is giving us is that we also have to have an engagement with higher education and basic education around the sector, because it's only those parents who can afford, and not everybody wants to go to university and do law and all other things. Some are gifted the other way, but unfortunately, TVET colleges are not offering what you guys want to do. So it's a conversation that we must take up, and it must come from you guys, because if you're not saying it, she may want to push it, but there must be a voice that comes seriously to say, we have to look at some of those things, because it's one of the industries that are going to grow very, very fast. Ne? I'm worried, Kaura Lebuleli.
There's a hand there at the back. The gentleman with the green jacket.
Is it green? Okay. My name is Vusi again. I'm from an organization called Behind the Blazer. We have already started with in engaging with high schools. We expose our students from different high schools in different careers around the film and television industry. Which I like the most about the Lima is that we could be feeding you guys, people who are already understanding the dynamics and the value chain and the disciplines of the film and television industry. So I'm just wanna clap for you. It's just, yeah, beautiful job.
All right, thank you. I think we can give a round of applause. And then the last question, there's a hand at the back. Yes.
Mine is more of a statement instead of a question regarding skills and us owning our own content. There's a show on Netflix, I think it's Iman, the lady who's on CNN. And she goes from country to country, understanding the cultures regarding intimacy from the different cultures and country. And what you get out of each and every custodian who speaks about how intimacy has changed within their countries is how each country allowed the Europeans to come in to dictate and impose on them their view, how certain things were taboo. And you're starting to see a falling apart of marriages more so in China, because sorry, I think it's Japan, because Japan opened their doors and allowed themselves to be scrutinized by the outside world. I'd like to take it back maybe to a statement I made earlier on, that if we're putting all our stuff on the internet, whereas we could explore other broadcasting standards that are not as expensive. For example, DMB, all you need is an adapter for your phone, and you can, receive broadcasting, and then you can use internet for OTT services. We can start actually cultivating our own content, and it's not as expensive. And the rush to create our own stories and to put our content out there is real.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll just take one more hand. The gentleman there. And then we can move to the next presentation by Ms. Pamela Bess.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Jethro Shabalala. I would like to also contribute and put some input that the fourth industrial revolution will affect everyone across the board. Kids, adults, pensioners, like myself also, I will be very much affected by it. My contribution will be that also we need to look at the issue of the workshop and the conferences, because they can really also add value in the developmental of certain skills, more especially for those who are unable anymore to be in the class through basic education and the tertiary. And lastly, also ourselves now, I would like to introduce the relaunch of the CDITP, which also will contribute in the development of human capital development on ICT. So all of us, we need not to be involved in taking forward these particular skills which are required. Thank you, that's my contribution.
I think we're all in agreement on, it's critical. Right now, it's as practical as students at our academy this week went out to local SMMEs in the township, and their job was to go and find 2 or 3 clients that they can shoot content for. So, you don't need big elaborate things to even train. They've now got a business track and film track running concurrently, and they've come back with a client or 2. They're getting paid a small amount to do it. The business is benefiting because they've got content they can now put on their website or their Facebook page they didn't have before. I think there's very simple ways that we can train in the process of doing as well, and to get as much of that certified and accredited as possible is always helpful. So one thing I didn't mention is that in the film industry, as an example, 2/3 of the top tier of the jobs is white. And it's largely because of the skills issue. It's the barrier to access. So it's about deconstructing, I guess, the skills programs we already have and putting together what works and coming up with things that you can do this week and next week you can actually generate income off.
Thank you. I think also one thing to mention around the issue of skills and our society is the fact that with this revolution, as a department, we are having a huge drive around cybersecurity awareness, because as our people get exposed to these online platforms and all these other technologies, there's a need to educate them about the do's and don'ts of how to operate in the online platform. So as a department, we have a program around cybersecurity. We also have a cybersecurity hub that is based at the CSIR, looking at how people can then report cybersecurity crimes that happen to them and whatever. And we work in partnership with industry and universities, and also with the provinces, where we go and do roadshows in the different provinces. So I felt it's something to mention in terms of the issue around skills. So I'll now hand over to Ms. Pamela Bess to give us a presentation on the Do TV online platform.
Thank you very much. Actually, we're not going to use the presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I know it's very warm, hey? Kuyashisa. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, namhlanje. Do TV Africa is just one of the several hats that I wear. Amongst these include being a very, very active social entrepreneur who believes in, yes, the very rapid transformation of our MICT sector into tangible and accessible opportunities for us all. I think in hearing what the speakers who have come before and have touched on, it was when I think I asked the other gentleman from CSIR, or was it Centec, one of the OTT platforms. I actually meant to rephrase that. There is no such thing as free lunch, except for when you attend functions such as these. But understanding that the cost of doing business needs to be something that we engage, we would wish to hear a little bit more and obviously talk to the pay-as-you-go options that the other gentleman from the department raised, where we are able to answer some of those costs of doing business, regardless of your location comments. So thank you for what you shared with us. For us, the journey as Do TV Africa has been sort of a back to front one. And we sort of got disrupted by our own passion. So in all our eagerness, I'm sure like many creatives, brilliant idea, rah, 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 let's get out there, let's launch this channel. Yeah, let's do this, make a ton of money. Didn't really work like this. And I think that when we talk about skills and the transfer and the development around that space, we need to have a very uncomfortable conversation. Because I'm very sure that most of us, in whatever space we're in, have met this challenge. It's called the work integrated learning, the learnership, and the internship beast. So we are in that, not ministers, in that SMM add an M, which is the mini category, where we're somewhere between we get a contract, we can produce, we can hire a crew of 3 or 2 to produce the content, but in between having those contracts, we're still mini and we're trying to move up to the next M. And these are the conversations we need to begin having as a collective within the ecosystem. The quality of the support, unskilled/skilled staff that are coming out of our institutions of higher learning, it's a big debate. You actually need to have a seminar all of its own to address this. There is a divide happening between the curriculums, and again, this is a call to leadership. This needs to be addressed. We may talk about the army and the building of this capable army, but if the context in which they're being educated and edutained is not matching what industry is actually requiring of them, we're churning out millions of absolutely useless qualifications. So we need to address that. And that's a point that needs to be touched on as creatives. Let's step up to the plate. Do TV is engaging with other stakeholders to also say, can we have a cutting of the red tape? I think anyone who has engaged with any CETA, I won't mention the one that I'm particularly aligned with, but any CETA, and you say the word accreditation, it's just a very painful conversation, isn't it? Accreditation alone, before we talk about me selling you the course, me selling you this opportunity to learn quicker and catch up with this 4th IR opportunity that is chasing after you, we need to talk about that education aspect. 20 participants later, just as I mentioned, we went through the process of having to engage with the disruption that we experienced in getting our very first opportunity to produce content for Vodacom's video play. So we got the opportunity, we were taken in as a development partner, but we could not deliver, simply because our capacity and the cost of doing, or let me say, digital content production, very few people actually understand that it's not just about you shooting a video on your phone. And many people assume it's as easy as social media, tweeting 5 times a week, post a couple of videos on YouTube. There's an actual administration and operational aspect of high cost that actually happens in terms of producing that content before you can even become a CP. So those are some of the shared challenges, and I thought perhaps it would be good to just bring those up and for all those present can also engage with. I work also with a group of very young creatives, disruptors in their own right, based in the northern KwaZulu-Natal region of Mpangeni. And they're called Algorithm Lab. They've disrupted my whole way of thinking. They've engaged not only Do TV Africa, but all the other MICT related partners in that space to start having on the ground conversations and saying, when we talk about creatives, can we not limit ourselves to producing videos for viewing? I would like to really go there a little bit as well. Creatives are everything across the entire value chain, from the people who do the coding, the software, the applications, the development, the back end, the management of the contracts, the HR, and so on. There's an entire world that also is of high value where you can develop a career which is not talked about. And yet these kids have managed to have or enter into a partnership with Richards Bay Industrial Development Zone, and they're the first accepted participants in the Techno Hub, and we're working together to bridge this divide. Their location should not limit them. Their first project is going to be the digitalization of Queen Nandi Regional Hospital. That's King Cetshwayo district, for those who may or may not know where that is, northern Zululand. And these kids came up with these solutions on their own. So we're saying, can we broaden the definition of what creative industry means? I'm just wanting us to engage that. Manufacturing and producing digital devices and also being the people who create the solutions for ourselves is a critical piece of the puzzle. Yes, the other gentleman spoke about, we don't want to just consume. We're sitting at the, well, for myself, I'm in Durban and obviously close to, well, Richards Bay with 2 ports at my disposal. What are we selling? What are we putting out there as creators? Do we have anything that we can brand as a nation and say, these are our exports? These are proudly South African goods and we are going to take them to the market. Gauntlet thrown down. And just wrapping up, because I know it's been quite a long day for most. Access and transformation will always go hand in hand. It is a fact. We have a historical imbalance. It is a fact. We have a challenge of access, but we cannot even begin to delve into solving the equity issue before we start talking the language at the level of the recipient. And by that, I mean those who are not here with us today. And by that, I mean the disabled. And by that, I mean the voiceless. I mean those who may not necessarily have yours or my level of intelligence or intellect or ability to digest all and crunch all this vast amount of information. Each one of us must take away from this environment a networking opportunity to solve at least 1 or 2 problems for the ecosystem or within the ecosystem. Produce something that can create a revenue stream not only for yourself, but for others. And last but not least, because I'm proudly South African, which is Zambian South African, the intra-Africa trade conversation, when I migrated 20 years ago and came to South Africa, I knew why I came here. I came here to do business. And I've been doing business for 20 good, solid years. It is not a border-driven thing. It's in our minds. And that, on that note, I thank you all. Let's all do digital and do life.
Thank you very much. I'll just open up for 1 or 2 questions for Pamela. Any hands? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Wanda from Telkom to give us a presentation while Salamina is still preparing hers. So the stage is yours.
Afternoon, everyone. I'll be very quick. Thank you for having me. I think it's a lovely opportunity to present what we at Telkom are doing. We believe that it is an opportunity to basically take through opportunities and give opportunities to individual people platforms on which they can express their content. From a telco perspective, which one? Sorry, screen is blank. Yeah. It's not connected. Just to give you, so in essence, from a telecom perspective, we've always been about connectivity, whether it's a fixed line connectivity and within the past couple of years looking at a mobile connectivity business. And for us, we definitely within the mobile space, really a data-driven organization. And therefore, all the things that we've done is around creating and creating that connected community and giving people access to high-speed broadband, ensuring affordability in that market and access to it. From a short-term perspective, we introduced about almost 2 years ago now some access product, what we refer to as lit video and lit music, which basically gave very affordable data packages to stream music and video packages. In the medium term, we then understood that a lot of these packages were really aimed at the high end. And the opportunity is to actually develop a platform where individuals can actually, who have the rights to the content and own the content that they have, to showcase it, so create monetization models for them. So rather than having to rely on just your traditional platforms, have a platform where their content can be viewed. And this is really where I want to speak to you about. So what our Telkom Lit platform is really about is creating opportunities for on-demand content. So like I said, we still have relationships and will continue to have relationships with major content partners like DSTV, YouTube, Showmax, Netflix, Simfy, Apple Music, as well as Google Play Music. And we're looking at adding more and more onto that so that consumers have choice around which services they want to produce. But we've also got an opportunity on that right block to then give, to have individual content providers who don't necessarily have the means or enough content to have their own platform to actually bring their individual content in and showcase it alongside other people's content and be able to monetize it. From a monetization opportunity, we look at both advertising, subscription, as well as transactional video on demand opportunities. So Telkom provides the platform, becomes a technology partner for these, for the content providers to be able to monetize the platform. But not only does the platform look at on-demand video, we also, being very advert and very committed within the esports arena, we actually have an esports league, the biggest in Africa. We've been running for over 10 years. We're actually going to be putting through an esports channel, which is basically going to showcase and provide exposure to our young and talented individuals who are already on these platforms, who are playing. I mean, we hosted the FIFA 18 festival last year, where one of our young 16-year-old kids actually won more than 400,000 Rand as part of this tournament. But it's about showcasing their skills, giving them opportunity and opening up. I think one of the previous speakers also spoke about the fact that esport is a growing industry. If we're not there and giving those opportunities,